Hello and welcome to Church at Home with Rachael for Monday, the 2nd of January. Happy New Year. I hope that you are recovered from your New Year's celebrations and that you're having a great beginning to the new year. Here in Canada, this is a statutory holiday because New Year's Day landed on a Sunday. So today everything is closed and I'm taking the day off. I go back to work tomorrow and I'm trying to just relax and enjoy one more day of reading books and watching Christmas movies from the Hallmark Channel that I have recorded. My husband got a lot of Lego for Christmas, and he is in heaven, sitting at the dining room table with his radio playing and his Lego in front of him. He's working on the Harry Potter Hogwarts Express at station 9 3/4. It's massive. It's huge. It's great. But I'm just thinking about stories. Been doing a lot of reading this past week. I love to read. It's my favorite pastime. And I find that I go in seasons. How about you? Do you go in seasons where you're really into your hobby and then you kind of slow down? I go in seasons when I'm really, really busy and get really tired from work. I find that at night I just haven't got the energy to read. So I'll pick up a book and I end up either playing mahjong on my tablet, my iPad, while the football game is on, or I'll watch a bit of TV. But sometimes I just can't read, and that hurts my heart. I always read before I go to bed. But then there are other times when I have more energy and I'm awake and I get comfortable and I get a cup of tea. Got lots of tea for Christmas. I got a cuddly sweater. It's awesome. Maybe I'll wear it tomorrow for church at home so you can see my new cardigan. It's brown. It's nothing flashy. But my husband gave it to me and he knows how much I like warm, cuddly things. So it's awesome. But doing a lot of reading and thinking about stories and the story of life. And, it's the new year. So I'm reflecting back on last year, 2022, and thinking ahead to what this year might hold. No resolutions, just wondering, dreaming, pondering, hoping. And got thinking about story. And Christmas Eve, I had the incredible opportunity at one of my churches to do a children's thing. So quite often if I have, just one second, I'm finding I'm very thirsty today. Christmas Eve, sometimes I haven't had an opportunity to have kids at church. But when I do, the whole service becomes very family oriented. And I find the families don't mind. They don't always usually, when kids are present, there's like a sense of excitement. So we do a whole NORAD report and talk about Santa Claus coming and things like that. But I also try to tell the gospel story, the story of the birth of Jesus. And this year in the church that I had kids at, I ended up having kids at a second of the 3 churches as well. Actually, I had kids at all 3 church services, but only one of them was I prepared to have a children's talk, and I think it worked out okay. But so I had a couple of kids there, and instead we used the gospel because we had invited members of a local indigenous community to join us. They weren't able to be there, but we had planned for them. So we used the Gospel of John from the Indigenous Bible, a translation truer to their understanding. And it really, sometimes it's good to hear the story from a different perspective. And then I told the story, instead of a sermon, I told the story of Jesus' birth and Mary and Joseph and getting to Bethlehem and stuff like that with a couple of kids. And we used some props. So we had a blank piece of paper that had a picture of a desert near Bethlehem. And then we had to add things to it. For instance, the first thing we had to add was the donkey, or Mary and Joseph, because they were at the beginning of the story. We told the story using props. So Mary and Joseph get their picture glued onto the pictures, and then we have a donkey because Mary rode a donkey, and then we had a cave because they went to a sheep cave in this version of the Bible. It's translated as a sheep cave, so we had a sheep cave, and then and at each stop we had little symbols, things like shoelaces to remind us that we have to prepare to go on a journey. The first thing we had was a little gift bag to put all these things in, our go bag, the things we need to prepare us for our journey. And then we had the shoelaces, and we had cotton balls to remind us of the sheep, and we had candy canes to remind us of the shepherds. We had candles to remind us of the light, the star that was shining that led everyone to Bethlehem. And we had, at the end, we had a couple more things, but at the end we had Christmas cards that said, Merry Christmas and about the birth of Jesus, and they were blank so that the kids could each take a couple of cards to share the story of Jesus' birth with other people. That they could choose someone they loved, or even a total stranger, and give them a Christmas card that began telling the story of the birth of Jesus. And it was good. We had fun. The kids were amazing. They were very shy at the beginning, but as it was like a scavenger hunt. So each place we went, there was a star that had a clue, and it led us on the next part of our journey, where we picked up another piece to put on our map, and then another something to put, little reminder to put in our go bag, until we ended up back at the Advent wreath with the Christ candle, the presence of Christ in our lives. But what was amazing to me was these two little girls. They've only been coming to church a little while. They come with their grandma, and which is incredible. And they come and they stay, they listen, and they pay a lot of attention. But what really surprised me, and it really shouldn't have, was that they didn't know the story at all. They really didn't know. When I asked them what Christmas is about, we talked about Santa Claus. Of course, we have to talk about Santa Claus because, hey, it's Christmas. But when I asked them what the season was about, they said it was about being kind and helping others and sharing gifts with people, which were all incredible and amazing answers for, they're either 7 and 8 or 8 and 9 years old. But because they haven't been coming to church for, only for a couple of months, we don't have Sunday school for them. So really what they've been learning is by osmosis, what they sort of pick up as they go by. It was absolutely astounding to me, both the intelligence and the acuity, the spiritual acuity of these two beautiful little children. And yet also how much we assume people know about the story. And that I shouldn't be surprised. I'm a priest. I know that people don't know the story, that children aren't going to church anymore. And even those children whose parents went to church with their parents, how much of the story do they really know? Like, for instance, I really, really, really knew Genesis and Exodus well. I see we moved around a lot as kids, and it seemed like every Sunday school we ever landed in started the school year with some part of Genesis or Exodus. We learned so much about Joseph and his multicolored coat. And then, of course, we've got Donny Osmond and Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat. We learned about Moses and the reeds, and we learned about the parting of the Red Sea and all of the plagues. We learned about the rock spouting water. We learned about we learned a bit into the end of the Exodus story. But we didn't much talk about Jesus in Sunday school. It was like our teachers and the curriculum they were using seemed to really want to give us a strong foundation in where we started from, which is fantastic. I totally think that's a great idea. If, though, codicil here, if that foundation has opportunity to be built upon. So if you get kids starting in kindergarten or grade 1 in Sunday school, and you've got them all the way through till grade 12, and they come every week, and you can tell the whole story, and it's continuous, that, you begin with kindergarten, and then you end up working your way through the Old Testament and into the New Testament, talking about Jesus and all of that stuff, that's fantastic. But realistically, how often does that happen? I think probably we more often now, at least in the Anglican Church, I think we have more emphasis on the gospel, talking about Jesus, and we have really cool crafts, and we learn little pieces of music, and we do, treats, like little food things. That's great, but how much are we actually teaching children about the story of Jesus? I have a hunch that if we started teaching about Jesus and helped our kids get fired up and understand how important that story is, that they might decide then to go back and do the back stuff. It's like the first time I read a Lucy Maud Montgomery book. She's one of my favorite authors. I'm big into Canadian authors. But the first time I read a Lucy Maud Montgomery book, read it, was Anne of Green Gables. And I had owned it for years, but I finally read it in about grade 10 or 11, maybe a bit earlier than that. And I fell in love with her stuff, and I read all of the Anne of Green Gables stories. And then I thought, well, what else has she written? And she's written the Emily of New Moon stories, and she's written all these other things. And so I went back and I read her other things. Same thing with Judy Blume when I was younger. I started off by reading Fudge, and then went back and read Are You There? No, sorry, I started off with Are You There, God Is Me, Margaret. Then I read Fudge, and then went back and read all these other books by her, and began discovering how incredible her stuff was. I didn't need to read it in order. What I needed to do was be introduced to her so that I could read her stuff and get fired up about it. And I think maybe that's what we need to do, is introduce people to Jesus and help them to understand how incredible, how absolutely incredible he is, and how life-changing our world can be when we get to know him. And then when they have that experience, then we can go back and teach them basics. But first we have to teach them about Jesus, because the truth is, there are whole generations coming up behind those of us who went to Sunday school who have no idea who he was, who he is. And that's a shame. I don't necessarily think that we need to shove Jesus down people's throats and think that they must believe in him. But I do think that we need to introduce him to them so that they can make a decision for themselves, see what they think, because maybe they would like to find out more about him and where he came from. Just some stuff I've been thinking about as I think about all the stories I've been reading lately. I hope that your story is going incredibly well. God bless you, and I will see you again tomorrow for Church at Home with Rachael on Tuesday.